Okay, thank you so much, folks. We want to just thank our friends over there at the Utah Pacific Island Film Series and the organization that just hosted the live showing of the Rogers. So we are back, and I want to just thank everyone for um, watching on behalf of the Utah Film Center, again, who just hosted the film The Rogers Live. What I'm going to do now is we are going to move into our panel discussion, and then we'll have some Q&A. We have some awesome guests today, and I hope they're all on, and I hope that they can turn on their cameras to be able to participate in our discussion. Again, The Rogers was a film directed by Joe Wilson and Dean Hamer, who filmed this in Samoa. And we are going to get our panelists together. Give us one moment. So I'm just going to ask, if you were watching the film, remotely, of course. Could you please I would love to hear just some of your initial reactions to what you saw. And if you can just put them in the chat in terms of any feelings that came up for you, questions that came up for you. I know that we've had a few folks that were typing during the film. Angela said, beautiful film. Lisa said the film was great. Thanks for sharing the link. So please feel free to just chat in the chat box initial reactions to the film. As I welcome our panelists, Joey, Joleen, Mataele. Joey, I don't know where you are and what time it is where you are, but you look fabulous, because I want to say it's like 5:00 a.m. where you are. And also we have Esera Tuaolo. Awesome to have you, Esera, and Hinaleimoana Wong-Kalu. I think Hina is here. If you are Hina, please turn on your camera so that we can begin our panel discussion. I think Hina is on audio only. Okay, so please continue to write comments into the chat box. We're trying to be as interactive as we can and as much as possible virtually. And so I'm so grateful that all of you got to watch this film. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna set a little bit of context in terms of the process of our panel. We're gonna have just a few panel agreements, as well as those who are participating in the conference, that we all just please be respectful. I'm gonna ask our panelists to please speak one at a time, share the air. We wanna hear from all of our panelists. Please be mindful of our time constraints. We have just about under an hour for this particular portion. And if we need some more time, we can. I will be the moderator. I originally was not supposed to be the moderator. Veavea from San Francisco's Utopia and founder of Utopia was unable to join us this morning because of emergency. So thoughts to you, Neo. And so we're going to go ahead and start the panel, and I'm going to ask each panelist if they can please introduce themselves, what island in the Pacific your heritage is from, and your role in the community. So I'll first ask that question. And so if we can, Joey, can we start with you, please?
Sorry. It's 4:00 a.m. here in Australia, but I am from the Kingdom of Tonga, and I work as a volunteer, but the executive director of and the co-founder of the Tonga Ladies Association. And yeah, is that all that you want?
Yes, thank you so much. 3 a.m. looks so good on you. Okay, Esera, please introduce yourself.
Talofa lava. My name is Esera Tuaolo. I am from, my family is from American Samoa. I was born and raised in Hawaii. I currently am in Minnesota, the beautiful island of Minnesota. I am part of the LGBTQ community, and I have an organization called Hate is Wrong, where we foster diversity, inclusion with professional sports, and also with the LGBTQ community. We also raise money for anti-bullying programs. And that's, I guess that's, I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and I go around the country speaking on homophobia in sports, diversity, inclusion, and all of that fun stuff. So.
Thank you, Esera. And Kumuhina, I believe you are on audio. Could you please introduce yourself?
So aloha everyone. I'm Hinaleimoana, Wong-Kalu, and I currently serve as a community advocate for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and a couple of other things in the community, but thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so my first question, and I'll ask this to all of our panelists. And we just watched the documentary The Rogers, and I kind of just want to get your initial reaction to the film as individuals of the collective of the LGBTQ plus community. Sort of what resonated with you the most in terms of watching the film based on your own experience. And so let's start with Hina, please.
Well, what resonated with me the most is that, and as someone who had participated as a minor advise to Dean and Joe, is that finally we get to see the opposite of someone like me. And it's not often that we, at least in the Pacific, highlight our trans brothers. And to see and to experience some of their challenges, some of the trial and tribulation that they go through, I can relate. I understand, and I've had people close to me that have had that same journey. So that's what I take away from this particular film.
Thank you. So really highlighting, the transgender community in the opposite of actually what is most popular, and being able to bring that forth and servicing that and continuing to bring awareness. So thank you so much, Hina. How about you, Esera? Things that resonated for you in terms of the film and based on your own experience.
In terms of the film, it's very powerful. And I watched the film earlier this morning, and basically I bawled my eyes up because it was just, you could feel their pain, you could feel all the things that they went through, sort of kind of similar to the things the LGBTQ community goes through, right? Being neglected, being isolated, being discriminated against, and all of that. But watching it, personally, it took me back when I was a little kid because I had an aunt. Her name was Becca, or Uncle Becca. And I remember as a little kid, there was nothing. I mean, as far as I didn't see the hardship side of what she was going through. But for me, I just saw my uncle, and I loved him, and I accepted him, and we did so much stuff together. But as you go older, and just watching this film, it sort of took me back to seeing the other side of her life and how she was being discriminated against and all of that kind of stuff. Because all I saw was me being a little kid and just an aunt or uncle just loving me, and it was very touching just to see the film and that it was just, like I said, I bawled, and I think it's something that should be heard, something that we should educate people on, and like Muhina said, it's the other side, right, of the spectrum. And I speak with the kid here in Minnesota. His name is Nick, and he's a trans boy. talked with his mom, Brenda, and they approached me to sort of kind of talk about some of the issues that they went through and all of that. But not only that, the most amazing things that this kid is at 10 years old, 11 years old, how he is just embracing himself. But not only that, going out to the community and talking and speaking to the schools and to other organizations about being a trans boy. And it is such a powerful thing, and it really changed my life. And so we are going to do some. I'm going to interview him on my Mr. Aloha podcast. But not only that, just show us sort of a part of his life at this young kid. I have a lot of trans friends, and some of them are okay with explaining the situation, and some of them aren't. Right. But speaking with Nick and his family, how supportive they are of him, it was just very powerful. So he's also an artist, and I sort of kind of dabble in art myself. And we paired up with a famous artist here in Minnesota, Paul Peterson, and we did a collaboration of art, and we're gonna sort of kind of introduce it to the world. And 100 of the proceeds are gonna go to charity. But again, very powerful film. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this. And like, again, you brought back a great memory for me with my Auntie Becca. But I never really saw the other side of her life. And this sort of kind of showed me what she was going through. And, my heart just broke.
Thank you, Esera. So, you really talked about how this brought you back this memory of your Aunt Becca, and just sort of the experience, and also sort of bringing it back to the work that you're doing with a young transgender person and the parent, and kind of having that discussion. And it's true, it sometimes can be challenging for people to explain their identity to people, and it can be very tiring. So I appreciate that work that you're doing there.
Believe me, it's not me, it's them.
Right.
I'm an open book, and I'm still learning. There's so many mistakes that I've done, but you know what? When you make a mistake and when you fall down, you get back up and you just move forward. So it's not me. It's me. It's continuing to educate myself and to learn about different things other than me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, Melissa. I think looking back at this movie it reminds me of how we started the Pacific Sexual Gender Diversity Network, and this network was actually founded by 3 people, which is myself, Ken Moala from Samoa, and Carlos Pereira, and we started trying to get all LGBTIQ people in. Unfortunately, there were only 2 genders that were able to come out, and so the work that we did was right after our second year. Our strategic plan and our objective was to actually bring in the other genders to come in. So Roger came in and then become the representative of the Samoa Fa'afafine. And out of the throughout the whole, I think we work with 18 Pacific Island countries. And out of the 18 Pacific Island countries, we've been able to decriminalize homosexuality law in 11 countries. Wow. But our work was still not complete because we wanted the other genders to come in. So we made it a priority to reach out to those that are not out, in public, such as the lesbians, the bisexuals, and so when we went back after the ICAP conference, we promised ourselves we're going to start bringing in the trans men, because that's the only way that the lesbians will come out. So out of the whole 18 countries, Fiji, Samoa, Tonga would be the only countries in the Pacific that have really brought out the trans men. And that's how the Rogers started, because Roger went back and then she reached out to them to bring them into, so every single time I look at this, unfortunately, we've lost Roger, and it's it reminds this every single time I watch this. I think I've watched Rogers for about 5 times because I've been screening it everywhere I go with the ladies in waiting, and in the Pacific. So, but every time I watch this, it brings me a lot of memories of Roger, and also the work that has been done throughout the Pacific. And it's an overwhelming feeling, and it brings you tears and happiness at the same time, and it's always good to see that there are other voices that needs to be heard.
Thank you, Joey. Just hearing you and thinking about all of the work that you've been doing around the Pacific, which is one of the reasons why you're kind of stuck in Australia, is to continue to build awareness around LGBTQ plus issues in the Pacific, and mobilize and organize. And I didn't know that Roger is no longer with us, so I'm sure that this film has now impacted many others. And talking about the work that you're doing with the 18 Pacific Islander countries to decriminalize crime around LGBTQ, and successfully have already done that in 11 countries, which deserves a round of applause, because that's not easy to change policy that then turns into law, and now implementation. So thank you for doing that work. You still got a couple more countries to work on, but thank you. There's a question here, Joey. Where can we access the Ladies in Waiting film? I believe, is it available on YouTube?
No, it's actually on. It's available on Lady Eva, which is the short film, is on YouTube, but Ladies in Waiting is available on SBS On Demand.
Okay, if you can just type that information into the chat at some point. I know that there will be a lot of individuals who are on this call who want to be able to watch that, so thank you. My next question is, I want to talk to Esera a little bit. Esera, because you are actually here with us in America. For those of you who are not that familiar with Esera, which you should be, he is an ex-NFL football player. And he also was recently on The Voice, which is a international live talent competition. And so you have actually come to the forefront of this conversation here in the United States. And I want to just talk to you a little bit, Esera, about like how this has impacted you as a Samoan Pacific Islander who has come forward, and really at the tail end of your career there at the in NFL, and then going on to live television for a music competition. But you are not just representing the LGBTQ community, but you're also representing your Samoan heritage. And maybe you can just spend a few minutes just to talk about that, and then I'll ask a very similar question to Kumuhina and to Joey.
All right, thank you so much for the platform again. I think being Samoan and born into the Samoan culture has helped me and given me the strength and the power and the mana, as we talked about, to sort of kind of deal with everyday life now. I think I'm very blessed in a way where I grew up in a Polynesian family. I grew up in Samoan family, and so all the struggles that I had when I was in the closet for 35 years of my life, playing in the NFL and not being able to be yourself. And as everyone knows, when you hold a secret or you hold a crippling secret, it is probably the worst thing ever. It doesn't matter what it is. You could be gay, straight, whatever. Anytime you have a crippling secret, it is very, it's not well at all. But I think when the opportunity for me to come out, it was because of my family, my 2 children and my partner at the time. And I think coming out and being a part of the LGBTQ community was the most liberating thing I've ever done in my life. And it's the most powerful thing that I've ever done in my life. And I think back, man, if I could feel like this, feel free and not having to look behind, over my shoulder to find out if somebody's going to find out if I'm gay or not, especially living in a world that really don't accept us for who we truly are. And especially when I played in the NFL, was very homophobic, and a lot of the negative things that came out during my playing time was not pleasant at all. So it was one of those things where when I did come out, and the power that I got just from being myself was absolutely incredible. And so I tell people, when I did come out, that opened up the opportunities for me to explore everything that I was passionate about, to go back and look at things that I sort of kind of skipped over. That's, the singing part, all of that, and to bring it to the forefront. Not only that, now being part of the LGBTQ community, it was just one of those things where I had to make a choice. I was quoting Shakespeare, to be or not to be, right? To be a part of something that's great, to be a part of something that's a movement that is very necessary, right? A part of something that will bring strength and honor and power, not only to my culture, but to the LGBTQ community, or to just sit back, do nothing, and live the American dream, right? The white picket fence, the house, the 2 dogs, the 2 kids, minus the wife. But I chose to be. And I am so honored that I am here with some incredible panelists and being able to speak and to share my experience. Now, and when I came out, it was the LGBTQ community, right? LGBT. There was a time in America where they wanted to pass a law on employment law, but then they wanted to leave out the T, right? Well, when they asked me, I said, you know what? Ever since I came out, it was LGBT. So you're telling us that we need to leave our brothers and sisters in the trans world, right? Pass the law, and then we can bring them along with us. Well, that's not how it works, right? It's not how it works in the Polynesian family, right? It's all or nothing for us, right? So, and that's what I said, no, we need to go together. We need to move forward, right? Obviously, things have happened, and, times have changed, right? Everything's been put on the table, all the LGBTQ community topics have been put on the table, right? It started off with politics, back in the days. But when you put things on the table to be talked about, that's when you start educating people. That's when the healing starts, right? Because then people start wondering and understanding, wait a minute, my brother's gay, my sister's gay, my aunt's gay, my uncle's gay, everybody's gay, my doctors, so not everybody, but I'm just saying, it just brings that awareness to people. And then also looking at the discrimination that we have faced in this country, it has pushed us forward into an equality part. So anyway, that's my story. Singing part of it, I was able to, after coming out, I was able to bring it to the front. I got I got contacted by The Voice. They asked me to sing. I auditioned. I guess I was good enough because they put me on the show. And it really opened up a lot of things. So what I try to do, all the popularity that I have done, all the things, I'm a chef, executive chef, I'm a singer, I'm an ex-NFL player, I'm a motivational speaker, I wrote a book, I'm an author. I try to use all of that to help our community to move forward. And if I can do anything, please, I'm here for all of you. Not just the LGBTQ community, but also for my Polynesian people.
Thank you so much, Esera. Similar question, and I'll start with you, Kumuhina. Both you and Joey have participated in documentaries and have been able to really build the awareness for the needs of the community and sort of the challenges. And we saw in Rogers, you know, many different themes of violence, fear, discrimination, suicide, homelessness, family dynamic, culture. And I'm going to get into faith in a second, but you know, with all of those competing themes, right, in the life of any individual, but particularly in the LGBTQ plus community, tell us a little bit about what are the most challenging things that you experience when you're trying to build awareness, especially within our own Pacific Islander community.
I think within our own Pacific Islander community,
Yes.
we see that our people still struggle with the realities of religious and spiritual beliefs, and reconciling the difference, you know, in terms of their own differences, their own insecurities, their own, how do I say it, their own desire and their own ability to be okay with other people living their truths. And I think that's one of the biggest issues and the biggest downfalls, is that um as i as I say to others when I have to include the concept or the understanding of Christianity within the lesson, and I tell people that Christianity is not necessarily the bad thing, at least especially when we consider Hawaii Christianity changed so much, and the loss of land, the loss of culture, the loss of language is directly attributed to Christianity. So when you mention Christianity here in Hawaii, to many of the younger generation of Hawaiians, especially, it's fighting words, because you know Christianity is viewed as public enemy number one amongst certain Hawaiians, and I realize that it's not that way amongst and sisters from other ever escapes me, and that is that people have a hard time reconciling it. Um, and I myself am also a member of the uh, Sesi Otonga Taotaina. I belong to Tongan Congregational Church here. You know, it's located in Tonga and many places overseas, but you know there isn't necessarily, at least on my part, the need to try to choose one or the other. And yes, I understand what um, you know, what views and what values are emphasized depending on who you talk to, but it doesn't mean that others have their right to impose what they see as right and what they see as appropriate for me, which in some people's eyes would mean that I could not be a part of that faith if I remain in the form that I am. So again, as I think about this, that's one of the most glaring things in terms of reconciling, you know, Christianity within and amongst our community here in Hawaii. Many people who are of the colorful LGBT spectrum, um, mentioning Christianity is not something that goes very far.
Thank you so much, Kumuhina, and really bringing that forward in terms of, for you, the biggest challenge among our own Pacific Islander communities, this reconciliation with the Christian faith, and how for Hawaiians, or many Hawaiians, Christianity is really sort of is contributing to the loss of land, loss of language and culture, and is viewed as, in your words, public enemy number one amongst most Hawaiians. So definitely something for us to think about in the way that we move. And thank you for saying that and for sharing that truth. Sorry, go ahead.
Melissa, I just want to say that, there are many Hawaiians who are staunch Christians.
Sorry, Kumuhina, you are breaking up a little bit, and so I can't really.
And while there are who went the way of culture, their cultural. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
All right. So, in an effort to restore their cultural identity, and an effort to seek their cultural road, there's a whole contingent of Hawaiians that have chosen to turn their backs on Christianity. I'm someone who does not choose to turn my back on my culture and our history, and I choose not to turn my back to Christianity in my life as well.
Thank you. I had to just take a deep breath for that one. Thank you for sharing that, Kumuhina. Joey, same question for you in terms of all of the work that you're doing to build awareness and really help our different communities. What has been one of the most challenging things for you that you've experienced among our own Pacific Islander community?
I think it's pretty much the same between all the other Pacific Island countries, apart from apart from the Melanesian countries, such as Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea. But I think out of all of them, the most challenged place that I've ever been to is the Solomon Islands, which is the reason why I'm stuck here, because I was there to deal with a murder case of a gay person, and also to actually screen the ladies in waiting in there. And it was so hard for me to actually even be able to talk to any of their decision makers until the only reason why they actually allowed me to come and talk to the Solomon Islands was because this murder happened to be on social media, and they couldn't hide it. The government couldn't hide it at all, because they actually chopped him up with cane knives, and it was one of the most horrific things that you ever see. But after dealing with that, and the funniest thing that I found out when I was there, that the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which every single Ministry of Internal Affairs or Women's Affairs, and who's supposed to be taking care of every single minority of the island, and it's the same ministry that all the other Pacific Islands have. Solomon Islands do not have the word sexual minority or LGBT on their mandate. It's not anything for them to talk about. It's just not even mentioned at all. So until this happened, and this, and it really made us sit down with their police commissioner and also um, the minister, who is a woman, and surprising that she didn't want to talk about it, until we sat down, and I kept pushing and pushing, at the same time I was afraid, otherwise they might not allow me to get out of the country, but it's just hard. But at the same time, taking you back to, I want to take you back to the island that I work at all the time. I might be dealing with with all the other Pacific islands, but the struggles in Tonga is still real, um, and the hearty laughter of Leitis usually does a good job of, masking and the painful struggles left behind, left behind us in the journey to find happiness. And behind the veil of pride is, in one's sexual identity, is a child longing to be loved, to not only be tolerated, but to be accepted as they are. And the TLA recognizes this as a, reflected in our current strategic plan, which is supposed to be renewed this month. And any stigmatization or discrimination against Leitis must be reduced to zero, and we will, we're still looking for funding or generate funds to strengthen and expand the services of the drop-in center. And that's, and another thing that we usually face is, when it comes to natural disaster, to cyclones and all that, we actually had to house our own people, because if a trans person goes into the centers, provide housing for all the families. It's most of those centers or halls belongs to churches. And when that family goes in, they accept the families to come in, but they won't let a lady to come in. So because in the last cyclone Gita, our whole living quarters were gone. Our office was gone, and what we had to do was we had to distribute all those ladies within our homes, because they weren't allowed, or they weren't accepted to come into those, evacuation centers. So it's we might say that Tonga has gone from, from the 19th century or the 17th century to a better Tonga. Yeah, that's just word, not the truth, and I don't know why I'm still sitting there. I don't see myself walking out of Tonga until I see everything, the work is completed, and yeah, we still continue to work, for improvement. We also, through national gatherings like, like the Miss Galaxy and all that, we raised awareness during the whole Miss Galaxy week, and especially when it comes to our anti-poverty programs. That's when we are actually working with the communities, and that's when we voice our concerns. At the same time, we're actually helping the community with floral making, cooking, and all those things. But I think the methodology that we've been using now is the Talanoa methodology. It's sitting like face to face with our barriers, in our consultations, and be able to talk to them face to face instead of them going and stand with banners outside and cursing us from there. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, there's just an enormous amount of work that is happening from all three of you, and so many more who are not here today on this panel. I see you, Esera, to be able to do all of this work. And so go ahead, Esera.
Well, sorry about that. I'll be very quick, and because I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and Kumuhina has brought it to our attention. But Joleen, thank you for the work that you are doing, and please be careful down there. But continue. If you ever need some help, please reach out. One of the things about Christianity that I wanted to sort of like piggyback on top of what Kumuhina said, the LGBTQ community has always been, I guess, discriminated against by the Christians and by religion. And so the message that I want to get out to, not only to my brothers and sisters in the Polynesian culture, but not to everyone that's watching or will be watching this, is that, right? When I was a little kid, I grew up in the church, the Hallelujah Church, right? And I remember going to church every Sunday. We had to do scriptures. And one of the scriptures I came across was this: don't put your trust in the flesh, because the flesh will fail you, but put your trust in God, because he'll never fail you. And that right there, I have lived with for all my life. I have lived for God, not for anybody else. The flesh is Christianity. The flesh are my parents, friends, and all of that. But I put my trust in God. I am a Christian. I'm not a gay Christian. I'm not a straight Christian. I am a Christian. I am a child of God. And what people need to understand, regardless if you don't like the color of my hair or my skin or what culture I come from, I'm still a child of God. And I think a lot of you that are listening to this need this message right now, because if you in the Christian faith go before God and he asks you why you discriminated against Esera, Tuaolo, or the LGBTQ community, what are you going to say? Because they're gay? And that's not going to work, right? You all need to understand, if you're going to call yourself a Christian, then be a Christian, right? Don't be a part-time Christian. Don't be any of like that. If you really love God, if you put God in your life first, then that's who you need to put first in your life, right? But I get so frustrated with people. The LGBTQ community had been taunted so many times by this bad rhetoric, or by this all the propaganda about us. You see it when you see it when sometimes when I go and speak, I get picketed, right? People, all these people come and this hate. But what I need to tell you that we are all children of God. And so that's sort of kind of like the message. I know people, Christianity has destroyed a lot of cultures and have done all of that. Of course, I'm not talking about that. We already know that. What I am talking about is my soul and your soul. You guys need to take care of your own soul, right? Don't worry about me, because I'll be fine. Don't discriminate against the LGBTQ community, because they're fine. I have so many kids, youth, contact me because their pastors or their priests are telling them that they're going to go to hell and they're abomination and what they should do and should not do. It's not up to you. All I need to do, and that's why I wanted to sort of kind of get this message out, just to piggyback on top of Kumuhina. Thanks for giving me the platform. But I think it's a message that all Polynesians should hear, and not only Polynesians, but everyone else. So.
Thank you, Pastor Tuaolo. You can go on ahead and add that to the...
I am an ordained minister. So.
Okay, well, here we go. So I want to just spend some time. I know there's a lot of people who are processing this information that are currently on the call. I know that Lisa has so many questions. Lisa, do you mind just asking your questions? I want this to be interactive, as if we were really live and in person to do some Q&A. If you don't mind, you can ask one of the questions that you presented in chat, or I can ask for you.
I didn't know we could ask the questions out loud. I thought we just had to do it on chat. But thank you, Miss Melissa. I'm sorry, Queen Melissa.
Oh, what? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This question is for all the panelists. in regards to our PI community, as you all know, that like religion is a big part of our community. How do you go about in working with the religious leaders in our Pacific Islander community? And have you guys formed any like positive relationships with them in spreading awareness and educational efforts with the work that you do? Thank you again for letting me ask my question.
Joey,
Yeah. Um, well, for us in Tonga, we have been able to establish, even if you, like I said, if you have watched the ladies in waiting, there was one pastor over there, Pastor Berry, and well, he was an enemy. He was a barrier, but now he's my best friend, and it's it does wonders when you invite them to come and sit at the same table and talk, and for us in Tonga, we don't believe in rallies. We don't believe in shouting, we believe in, yes, dialogue. We talk, we speak the same language. We don't speak in French, we speak in Tongan, And if you don't understand my Tongan, honey, you might as well go to New Island so you can talk like a Samoan. Okay? But I mean, we bring in our cardinal, we bring in all the leaders of the churches to come and sit down and we dialogue. And that we use the Talanoa methodology to tell our stories without concealment. The truth is not meant to offend anyone. It is meant to raise awareness. The life, that life is not always sequins and blush, Sometimes underneath, they need to know that, underneath the makeup and all that, the shrieks of laughter and the talent, there's a child who is hurt, and they need to know that. They need to know the real thing, what's behind the scene. And that's the only way that we've been able to negotiate with them, especially when we're trying to change laws in Tonga, And they even thought that when we were trying to decriminalize the homosexuality law, they thought that we wanted that whole clause of 136 taken out. And not only that, they didn't even know that there was a such law as that criminalizes cross-dressing, that there were such laws in that biblical law that, and they said, how is that possible? Was it there all the time? And I said, yeah, it's been sitting there since Mr. Baker adopted it and gave it to George I to be adopted. Unfortunately, you people read your Bible too much and you neglected a part of that. So we had to, these are things that we've been doing, and to amend, if we don't take away those laws, we need to amend it so it fits every single person in the country.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. I think that that's such an amazing thing that your number one barrier has now become your best friend. And I write dialogue in there because yesterday I talked about dialogue, and that is, when we have different perspectives, we're only going to reconfirm our own feelings because we're only talking to people who think like us. And it's not until you put two people with differing experiences and perspectives together where there's deeper understanding, increased empathy, and now a best friend. So I love that. And thank you for sharing. Kumuhina, you also brought, the reconciliation of Christianity, and I'd love to hear more about sort of that in terms of Lisa's question around working with faith leaders.
Walk of life, because I have chosen not to go the way of some of my fellow Hawaiians, and I have chosen to continue to embrace Christianity. Um, there are two communities that I can exist in when it comes to Christianity. In the Hawaiian community, my family from the island of Niihau, they are extremely rooted in Christianity, but they have much room for me to be a part of anything and everything that I could avail myself to if I'm back on Kauai Island, where most of my Niihau Island family lives today. And on the other side of my life, being active within the Tongan community, my my church, again, the Siasi o Tonga Taotaina, the Free Church of Tonga, I am very fortunate to have received the words from the highest of our church leadership, the president of the church, and that leadership is currently under a wonderful man who is his name is Semis Fonua, and I'm just how do I say? I'm beside myself when I think about what he had afforded me. And this was back in 2008. And it was after a church conference here in Hawaii. And he started to give his farewell speech after the choir rounds. And he said, he started to talk about someone, a, uh, a member of the congregation. And I said, oh, this story sounds familiar. I wonder who this is. And he mentioned that this person took care of her mom. And this person is very active. This person sings with the choir. And I was like, oh, I wonder. And then he said, Hina. And the entire um, uh, lunch cafeteria that was filled with all of our church members turned and looked at me. And I, I just didn't know what to do. It was like a deer in headlights. Um, but he told our congregation, he was speaking in Tongan, but the equivalent in English was that he knows how his people, our church congregation, can be when it comes to the understanding of people like Hina. And then he said, you shall all respect Hina as your sister, and you shall welcome her anywhere in and around the church family, whether it be at a church or you are available and able to help her and assist her. You will welcome her, you will make her feel at home, and you will not treat her with any less dignity than you would anyone else. And he said she is free to go wherever she pleases in and amongst our church family, and that you will all respect her and not mock her and not put her down. And this is my word to you. You are to love and to and and that's it. And I was in tears when I heard this because I know exactly what the struggle is. When I hear Joey talk about the kinds of discrimination that go on. And having been married to a Tongan man, I know firsthand what those um what those sentiments were. But to have the word of acceptance and the directives given to the rest of my church community, uh, was the greatest honor that I could have been given. Not for me personally, but for the fact that I have some place that I can be okay, and no matter how much I'm gonna be myself, whether you like it or not, it was a good feeling to know that this church family was all told um, how to be a caring family, secondary family for me. So that's just my little story that I wanted to recount to you all.
So I want to thank you, Kumuhina, for sharing that. And um, as we try to build our capacity at being better people and better community and better ocean, it's so important that we hear different experiences. And today, our focus is on building awareness among the community and to absolutely prevent violence and violence in every context. Because when people don't agree or align themselves with us as individuals, they tend to resort to different types of violences. And so what you're saying today is so powerful. Sarah, did you want to just say a few words about this and maybe in some of the work that you were doing with any faith leaders there?
Laisa, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. I'm actually glad that my mom dragged me to church when I was little. This first Samoan Assembly of God, Hallelujah Church, because I've learned a lot. And I learned a lot by reading the Bible, right? So I've been speaking for the last 15 years. And I have I've always addressed religion in my speeches when I go speak to colleges, corporations, and other organizations. And I've always done my religious part, and by just educating people on who we are and who I am as an individual. So that is one of the ways that I sort of kind of get out there and I work with with religion and homosexuality. The other thing is that I do workshops with churches. I did a workshop here with a church in Minnesota. I'm not going to say which church or the pastor because something happened after that. But it was great because he wanted to do something circled around gay families. And it was part of the time where Minnesota was about to place a vote on if we should get married or we shouldn't. So he wanted to do a workshops. And so I did. And it was great because we invited the surrounding churches. And he's got a little church and over 1,000 people showed up from all different churches, right? And I remember him speaking and he went first. And I just remember looking around to everybody and how their eyes were, people were making faces. You can read a lot of people, right? So when I was about to go and speak, a woman raised her hand from this very progressive church here in Minnesota that really, they go around and picket people and stuff like that. And she said, you know what, Esera, I just want to thank you for coming into the Lion's Den. And I looked at her and I said, what's your name? She said, Joanne. I said, Joanne, this isn't the Lion's Den. No. The Lion's Den was 35 years of my life in the closet. That was the Lion's Den. This is not the Lion's Den. I am always welcome in the house of God. And that's one thing that I got when I was a little kid, right? I'm always welcome in the house of God. So that's sort of, just working with some community leaders and religious leaders. When my kids were growing up, when we adopted my kids, we went to a church here called Mount Olivet. It's the largest Lutheran church in North America. Pastor Youngdahl is an amazing guy. He, God rest his soul. But I remember coming out in 2002 and him writing me a letter, and I still have it, just congratulating me and making sure that he understood and that we knew that he supported. And this Pastor Youngdahl, I mean, there's over 200,000 members in this church. And to get that confirmation from him and not even telling him or telling the congregation, we just went to church like everybody else with our 2 kids and stuff like that. So it was just awesome just to get that, that confirmation from him. And I feel you, Kumuhina, I really do. But that's sort of like the ways that I'm doing what I need to do. is, you know, when I go out and speak, I make sure I include a religious part in my speeches. So I'm still going out there virtual speaking, and then also when all of this sort of kind of tames down and we try to get back to okay normal, we'll get back out there and speak on this topic.
Thank you so much. We're gonna wrap up this wonderful panel. I'm so honored.
Thank you, Melissa.
I mean, Kumuhina, Esera, and Joey and I and some others on this call, we kiki on Sundays all the time and we sing songs, and I'm just so grateful to all of you for being so brave and courageous to do the work that a lot of people don't want to do. And there's so many lives that you all save and continue to help in our community. And I'm so grateful to have been able to moderate this panel. I want to close with just one more question to each of you. And that is, what is your hope? What is your hope for our community? And that's as broad or as narrow as you would like it. But I would love to hear, what is your hope as a final word in this panel? And I'll start with you, Joey.
Thank you, Melissa. And I think my hope is that I want to voice what our cardinal said in the latest in waiting, that Tonga will become a more loving country. And when I say love, it takes me back into the second golden value of Tonga, you know, love, or love thyself. And the question that I always ask is, if you do not love thyself, then how the hell are you going to be able to love others?
Yeah.
You know, and we need to learn the true meaning of love. And that is to love every single person that God has put into this world. Whether you're black, blue, green, or, you know, intersex, LGBTIQ plus, you have no right to judge that person, because he was put into this world for a reason, you know. And I always use my grandmother's words all the time, you know, that we need to forgive each other. You know, if we don't learn to forgive, we won't love. Forgive is always better than sacrifice. And I want the world, I want Tonga to be a country of real love. That's my hope.
Thank you, Joey. Esera?
Wow. Melissa, thank you so much. And thank you for doing this. You did a fantastic job, and I really appreciate you. My hopes, right? Wow. To sort of add on to what Joey has said, right? Love, people being able to love unconditionally, but also being able to accept one another, right? No matter what walks of life they're from, right? I've always said that. One of the things and stuff that I have always told people is that if you want to put positive energy out there, if you want to put love out there into the universe, what you need to do is get rid of all your shit first, right? All the hate that you have in the heart, you look in the mirror, all the hate you have in the heart, all the hate that you have in your soul, in your spirit, or whatever it is, to get out of your life. And it's as easy as you just saying, get out of my life, right? Or just giving it up to God, because we all know that he is able, right? Definitely able to give it up to him. More of him, less of us, right? I think my hope is that we, people of, this world, humanity, all of that, that we bring God back into our lives. Not religion, not like Christianity or whatever. I'm talking God, right? His love, his compassion for all his children. And that is my hope for everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Kumuhina?
Thank you. I think that I'd like to take us on a slightly different track with this response. Well, actually, it's not very different at all, but the focus and the entry point for this particular view is coming from someone who has based the last 30 years of my advocacy. I've based it on culture. And while we are all speaking here in the English language to lessen the divide between the islands, to lessen the distance from wherever we might be calling in from, we speak in English. But when we speak in our language, whether the dialect be aloha, alofa, or ofa, or in the case of when we speak of the love of God, we alo ofa. It is all the same word. And we, the people of the Moana, have a clear understanding of this aloha. This aloha is not defined by creed nor color. It is not defined by social status or any of those other trappings of Western life. And I believe that we have the absolute capacity to look within ourselves and to also apply those understandings as we process and as we synthesize our lives, whether it be as a Christian person or life as some aspects of religion and spiritual belief. If we adhere to the principles of our culture and the word aloha, we will be able to find that kind of love, honor, and respect for all people, whether it is someone who is lighter in shade or darker in shade and color of the skin, whether it is someone who has a physical disability or someone who deals with something that makes them look, feel, or sound different. The main idea is that we keep aloha in our hearts, even for those whom would stand against us and whom would put us down. That, I believe, is not only an example of the kind of Christian loving kindness and caring, but it is also the most virtuous level of the understanding that we call aloha. And that's what I'd like to leave with everyone today.
Thank you so much, Kumuhina. Thank you to all of our panelists today for engaging in this conversation. Thank you to those who are in the conference and who have been chatting. We appreciate it so much.